It was 4:58 p.m. when the box appeared on the corner table, not a second before. No ribbon, no tag, just cream paper with 3 words stamped in small black font, "To A with Love." I was still in my wedding dress, standing beneath the oak canopy on Fort Hamilton's parade lawn, shaking hands with the last of the guests. My husband, Commander Ethan Ward, was in full Navy whites posture, like it had been carved from the ship's bow itself. The evening breeze barely moved, but the air felt tighter. I reached for the box without thinking. Ethan's hand closed around my wrist, firm, precise. "Don't touch it." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through every other sound. I followed his eyes, expecting to see the package again. Instead, his gaze locked on my younger sister Isabella, leaning against the bar with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. The moment she saw his stare, that smile dropped. 3 of his SEAL teammates rose from their chairs like they'd just heard an unspoken order. My stomach tightened. This wasn't a gift, it was an operation. And somehow my sister was already part of it. Ethan didn't blink. He kept his eyes fixed on Isabella like the entire lawn had disappeared, like there were only 3 people left in this world, him, me, and my sister. "Stay here," he murmured, before signaling to Lieutenant Brooks, one of his men. Brooks moved toward the box with slow, deliberate steps, producing a handheld scanner from inside his jacket. The way he handled it, you'd think he was disarming an unexploded shell. I glanced back toward the bar. Isabella was no longer watching us. She was watching Brooks. Her glass of wine trembled slightly in her hand, not from cold, but from calculation. The scanner gave a soft ping, too soft for anyone else to notice. Brooks looked up at Ethan and gave the smallest shake of his head, the kind that said, "Not here. Not now." Ethan stepped closer to me, his grip still tight around my hand. "We're moving this to secure storage," he said low. "Stay with me." I didn't argue, though. My chest was a storm. It wasn't just the box, it was the way Isabella was acting. She wasn't shocked, she wasn't even pretending to be curious. She looked cornered. Brooks carried the box toward the chapel's adjacent admin building, his movements smooth, controlled, careful not to draw more attention than necessary. 2 more SEALs flanked him, blocking any direct line of sight. The reception noise thinned conversations, turning into hushed exchanges. Everyone could feel something was wrong, but no one dared ask, not in front of a man with Ethan's ribbons. When I turned back to the bar, Isabella was gone. My pulse kicked up. Where did she... She left. Ethan interrupted. His jaw was tight. "And that's all you need to know for now." But that wasn't all I needed to know. Not by a long shot. We made it to the admin building, where the base's security officer was already waiting. The man looked like he'd been pulled straight from a combat drill. No jacket, just rolled-up sleeves and eyes that didn't blink enough. Ethan handed him the situation in clipped Navy shorthand. I caught phrases like unverified package and potential compromise, but my attention kept drifting to the fact that Isabella had vanished like she'd rehearsed it. While Brooks and the officers secured the box inside a locked steel cabinet, Ethan pulled me into a side office. 4 months ago, he started "Isabella called you in the middle of the night." I froze. "She was crying," he continued. "Something about a financial mess, wanting you to hold some documents for her. You told her no." "I told her no twice," I said, the memory biting. "She begged. I still said no." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "That box, that's her plan B." A sick chill spread through me. The wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was the perfect distraction. She could drop something in my lap while I was surrounded, trapped by the expectation to smile and nod. And worse, I knew this move. It was calculated, timed. My brother Caleb used to pull the same stunts. Caleb Ward, Army Quartermaster Corps, discharged after a quiet investigation into rerouted military equipment, officially administrative misconduct, unofficially black market deals with off-book buyers. He called it getting ahead. I called it treason. Years ago, he'd begged me to let him use my PayPal account just until the freeze was lifted. I'd hesitated, but not long enough. He created an account in my name, without my consent. I buried it instead of reporting him. Now looking at Ethan, I realized exactly what my family's patterns had taught Isabella. Back in the present, Ethan pulled out his phone and sent a message I couldn't read. "Nichols from NCIS will meet us in an hour. We'll get answers before this night's over." Before I could reply, Brooks returned. "Sir, no hazardous material, but there's a sealed envelope taped inside the lid." "Open it," Ethan ordered. Brooks slid on gloves, peeled the envelope free, and passed it to Ethan. Inside were 3 sheets of paper. The first was an invoice for imported ceramics. My name was at the top in bold, my signature scrawled beneath. Except it wasn't mine. The second was a contract between A. Ward Holdings and a Florida-based supplier, 2 weeks old. The third was a wire transfer confirmation, $9,800 routed through an account under my name to a shell company. My stomach dropped. "This isn't a gift," I whispered. "It's a delivery receipt." Ethan's voice was flat steel. "They used your wedding to confirm a shipment." I stared at the papers. My own name looked foreign, like it belonged to a stranger I didn't want to meet. An hour later, Nichols arrived. He was calm in a way that told me he'd seen worse, but not much worse. "Lieutenant," he greeted, "we've got digital forensics running already. We'll trace the IP on the contract upload." I slid into the chair across from him. "I know where to start." Nichols raised an eyebrow. "You do?" "My sister doesn't act unless she's holding a loaded hand," I said. "And she only gets that hand from one place, Caleb." Ethan didn't correct me. Nichols leaned forward. "Then you're telling me this is family?" "I'm telling you it's organized," I replied, "and I'm done letting it run through my name." Nichols nodded once, then reached for his recorder. "Then let's start building your statement." And in that moment, I knew the wedding was over. Not just the celebration, but the illusion that blood was always safe. Nichols didn't waste time. He slid a fresh notepad toward me and clicked his pen. "Let's map this from the beginning. Every call, every email, every favor." I started talking. The words came out sharper than I expected, clipped with years of things I hadn't wanted to admit. Every late-night request from Isabella. Every guilt-laced "you've always been the strong one" from Caleb. Every time I'd said no, only to find they'd already moved without me. Ethan stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching. His presence was a quiet anchor, but I could feel his mind working, scanning for angles like he was back on an op. Nichols' expression didn't change as he jotted notes, but when I finished the timeline, he tapped the page. "That ceramic shipment, the one on this invoice, it matches a label flagged in another case." "What kind of case?" I asked. "Commerce fraud tied to a laundering network. They've been moving high-value goods disguised as low-value samples." "And they used my name to give it legitimacy," I said. "Exactly." Nichols had his tech team pull IP logs from the supplier's account. 30 minutes later, he returned with a printout. 4 logins over the past month, all from the same residential IP in Queens. My pulse quickened. I knew that neighborhood. Isabella's. Ethan didn't wait. "We need to see the origin point for prior shipments," he told Nichols. The tech traced back 3 more logins, 2 from the same IP, 1 from a coffee shop Wi-Fi in Brooklyn. The timestamp on that one was 9:14 a.m., 3 days before my wedding. Isabella had been at my bridal fitting that morning. She'd left early, claiming she had a quick errand. Now I knew what it was. By late evening, Nichols had a small mountain of evidence on the table. Contracts, forged invoices, bank transfers, each one a thread tied back to my name. I leaned over the stack, scanning details, my training in logistics kicking in. "This isn't random," I said. "They're running timed deliveries. Each shipment piggybacks on a legitimate one using my name as a shield." "Why you?" Nichols asked. I almost laughed, because I've never given anyone a reason to doubt me, and they knew I wouldn't make a scene, especially not on my wedding day. The next morning, Ethan drove us to a storage facility in Long Island City. Nichols had gotten a warrant overnight. According to shipping manifests, it was the staging point for the last 3 deliveries under A. Ward Holdings. From the outside, the place looked like any other warehouse, chain-link fence, faded signage, a bored clerk inside the glass booth. Nichols flashed his badge. "Unit 12B, he said. The clerk didn't even ask questions, just handed over a key. Inside, the air smelled like dust and cheap air freshener. On the concrete floor sat 3 identical boxes each, the same size and wrapping as the one from my wedding. Ethan pulled a box cutter from his pocket. "You ready?" I nodded, though my pulse was pounding. He sliced the tape on the first box. Inside were rows of ceramic figurines, cheap, mass-produced, worthless on their own. But nestled beneath them, wrapped in brown paper, was a sealed manila envelope. Nichols opened it carefully. More invoices, more contracts, and another wire transfer slip, $15,000 this time. My name forged again. The second box was the same, so was the third. We loaded everything into Nichols's SUV, the evidence bags filling the back. As we drove away, I stared out at the skyline. "They've been doing this for months," I said quietly, "maybe longer." Ethan didn't take his eyes off the road. "Then we finish it now." That afternoon, back at the NCIS field office, Nichols called me into a conference room. Isabella was there. She sat at the table, arms folded, her face pale but composed. For a second, I saw the little sister who used to follow me around in the yard, desperate to keep up. Then the image evaporated. "Anna," she said, using the nickname only family did. "I can explain." I sat down across from her. "You're going to try." She looked at Nichols. "Can we have a moment?" "No," I said before he could answer. Her jaw tightened. "It wasn't supposed to touch you." I laughed short, bitter. "It had my name on it, Isabella. It was built to touch me." She glanced down at her hands. "Caleb said it would be quick. 1 shipment. Clean, easy. You forged my signature 3 times. That's not 1 shipment." Her voice broke. "I didn't think they'd trace it back." I leaned forward. "You didn't think I'd fight it back?" Nichols ended the meeting after 10 minutes. Isabella was escorted out for formal processing. Watching her go, I felt no satisfaction, just a hollow clarity. Ethan came up beside me. "You good?" I shook my head. "Not yet, but I will be." That night back home, I pulled a locked metal box from the top shelf of my closet. Inside were every personal document I'd ever protected: birth certificate, commissioning papers, bank records. I started scanning each one into a secure drive, labeling them with precision. If my name had been a weapon for them, it was going to become armor for me. By midnight, the folder was complete. I shut down my laptop, sat back, and let the quiet fill the room. This wasn't over, but for the first time I knew exactly where to aim. The next morning, I didn't put on my dress uniform. Instead, I wore plain black slacks, a fitted blazer, and low heels, neutral, deliberate, a reminder to myself that I wasn't walking into a briefing as an officer, but as someone reclaiming her own narrative. Ethan drove me to the base NCIS office. The building was sterile, no windows in the main hall, the kind of place that swallowed sound. Agent Nichols met us at the entrance, a folder tucked under his arm. "Morning, Lieutenant," he said. "Morning," I replied, even though I felt anything but. He led us down a narrow corridor into a small interview room. At the table sat my parents. I stopped cold. Mom's eyes darted to me, then down to her hands. Dad just watched, jaw tight. Nichols set the folder down but didn't open it. "They have information," he said, "and you have questions." The silence was thick enough to chew. I pulled out a chair but didn't sit right away. "When did you find out?" Dad's gaze flicked to Mom. She hesitated, then said, "Isabella and Caleb told us months ago. They said you were helping them with a side business." My voice stayed even. "And you believed them?" "They said it was classified," Dad added. "We thought maybe it was part of your work." I let out a sharp laugh, the kind that isn't funny. "You thought I was running shipments through a fake corporation under my own name, and you didn't ask a single question." Mom's voice shrank. "We didn't want to insult you." I leaned forward, palms on the table. "No, you didn't want to deal with what the truth would require. You didn't want to choose." Ethan stood silently against the wall, letting me carry the weight of my own voice. I turned back to my parents. "I came here hoping there was still someone in my family willing to tell me the truth. Instead, you're telling me you accepted the story that was easiest to hear." Dad's jaw clenched. "We didn't know everything." "You knew enough," I said. "Enough to stop it, enough to warn me. And you did nothing." The words landed like a gavel. I pushed my chair back, stood. "I can forgive being tricked. I can't forgive pretending it wasn't happening." I walked out before they could answer. In the hallway, Ethan caught up to me. "You didn't have to go that far." "Yes," I said. "I did. Because they're part of the pattern, and I'm done letting patterns run my life." That afternoon, I found myself standing behind a two-way mirror in another NCIS room. Isabella sat inside, looking every bit the polished younger sister, hair perfect, makeup flawless. But there were dark circles under her eyes, now faint but telling. Nichols motioned me in. She looked up when I entered. "Anna?" I sat across from her, folding my hands. "You always thought I'd protect you," I said. "You always have," she replied. "Not this time." Her lips parted, maybe to argue, maybe to plead, but I cut her off. "Strength isn't silence, Isabella. It's boundaries." She blinked, fast eyes glistening. "It was supposed to be 1 shipment," Caleb said. I shook my head. "Stop blaming him. You're the one who signed my name. You're the one who used my wedding day." Her voice cracked. "Can you fix it?" The audacity made me laugh, not with humor, but with disbelief. "If I fix this for you, I become you, and I've worked too hard to keep my name clean." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Caleb's pinning it all on me." "Then maybe you should stop making yourself his accomplice." Nichols stepped in, signaling the interview was over. Walking out, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I wasn't trying to understand why they did it. I was documenting what they had done, turning it into an official record no one could rewrite. Ethan must have seen it in my face because as we walked to the car, he said, "You're not spiraling." "No," I replied. "I'm recalibrating." Back home, I sat at my desk and began building a visual map: names, dates, shipments, money flow. In my world, logistics is a weapon. If you know the routes, you know the enemy. And this enemy wasn't overseas. It was in my own bloodline. I pinned Everline Imports at the center. Every arrow traced back to Isabella or Caleb. Every arrow carried my name. But not for much longer. 2 days later, Nichols called. His voice was even, but I could hear the undercurrent. "We've traced the paper trail to a warehouse in Newark. Your name's on 3 more shipments. We're moving now. You want in?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Ethan was already at the door by the time I hung up. "We'll take my truck," he said. The warehouse was exactly what I expected. Corrugated steel siding, faded signage, chain link fence topped with rusted razor wire. From the outside, it could have been storing anything from produce to spare parts. Inside, it was a different story. Stacks of crates lined the walls, each one labeled with vague product descriptions. Decorative ceramics, display samples, household art. The kind of language that meant nothing and everything. Nichols handed me a pair of gloves. "See for yourself." We started cracking open crates. Inside, layers of cheap pottery clearly meant as camouflage. Beneath them, sealed envelopes, bubble-wrapped hard drives, forged manifests. My name was on half of them. Ethan whistled low. "They didn't just use you, they built an entire route around you." At the back of the unit, I found a clipboard hanging from a nail. The log sheets listed pickup dates, delivery addresses, and initials of the scheduling agent. On 4 separate entries, the initials were I.W. "Isabella Ward," I said out loud. Nichols nodded grimly. "She wasn't just signing your name, she was running the timetable." Something in me clicked then. All these years I thought Caleb was the dangerous one because he was reckless. Isabella was worse, she was disciplined enough to hide it. We hauled every piece of evidence back to NCIS. The cyber team began cross-referencing IP addresses from shipment requests with security footage from the warehouse. By late afternoon, they had it grainy black and white footage of Isabella in the loading bay, hair tied back, sunglasses indoors, smiling at a driver while she pointed to a crate the exact size and wrapping as the gift from my wedding. I stared at the screen. She looked comfortable, like she'd done this a dozen times. "That's your smoking gun," Nichols said. When I left the building, the air felt sharper, like the wind had shifted. Ethan fell into step beside me. "You realize what this means, right?" I nodded. "It means she wasn't working under Caleb, she was leading it." And that, Ethan said, changes the entire strategy. The next morning, I asked Nichols for a meeting with the federal prosecutor assigned to the case. We sat in a conference room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and paper dust. "I want to file formal charges," I told him. "Forgery, identity theft, conspiracy, every statute you can apply." The prosecutor, a man with sharp eyes and a slower voice, nodded. "You've done half my job already. This is airtight." He slid a set of affidavits across the table. My hand didn't shake as I signed them. That night at home, Ethan grilled steaks on the patio, while I sat at the kitchen table organizing digital files on a flash drive labeled folders chronological order supporting evidence. Years of military logistics had taught me the power of order. Now I was using it to dismantle the operation that had stolen my name. Ethan set a plate in front of me. "You're smiling." I hadn't realized I was. The promotion board put my packet back in active consideration, I said. He raised his glass, to taking it back. We clinked without another word. 2 weeks later, the first hearing took place. Isabella sat in a navy suit, hair immaculate, eyes fixed forward. She pled guilty to wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy in exchange for probation and restitution. No prison, but no more hiding. Either her name would forever live in the federal fraud database. When the gavel fell, I felt no victory, just a closing door. Then came Caleb. He swaggered into court like he was still in control. But with Isabella's confession on record, the prosecution didn't need him. He pled not guilty. It didn't matter. Emails, transfers, and a recorded call where he laughed about me being too busy saving the world sank him. 18 months in federal prison plus full restitution. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Outside the courthouse, Nichols approached with a clipboard. "Lieutenant Ward," he said, handing me a form, "this confirms you're no longer under any internal review or surveillance. Name's clear." I signed it, then traced my fingers lightly over the line where my name was printed. Not vanity recognition. Ethan and I stepped into the sun. He asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "Clean," I said. "Not relieved?" I shook my head. "Relief is temporary. Clean is permanent." We walked on the city, moving around us indifferent, and for the first time in months I didn't feel like I was carrying someone else's mess. That night I opened the top drawer of my desk and slipped the clearance form into my personal file, the same folder that held my commissioning letter and commendations. It didn't erase what happened, but it made sure the record reflected the truth. And the truth finally had my name on it. 3 mornings after the court hearing, I woke to an email notification. Subject: personnel status update. I sat up slowly, reading the first line twice. Status: active consideration. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the months my career had been in limbo. Just 3 quiet words that restored me to the table. I printed the email, folded it, and slid it into the same folder that now held my reinstatement form. Then I closed the drawer. That was enough ceremony for one day. At the base gym, I ran 5 miles, not because I needed to, but because my body remembered the rhythm of discipline. Sweat washed away the lingering static in my head. When I left, the air smelled like sea salt and jet fuel home. Instead of heading back to my office, I walked to the squadron admin section. The sergeant behind the desk looked up sharply when I entered. "Ma'am?" he said, standing a little straighter. I handed him the printed status update. "Add this to my packet." "Yes, ma'am." He typed something, and I watched the progress bar on his monitor crawl forward. When I stepped out, I noticed the corkboard outside his office, rows of photos of squadron members. Mine was still there. Second row, eyes forward. I adjusted the curling corner, then left without a word. At home that evening, Ethan was already out back with the grill going. The smell of rosemary and charred meat drifted through the open door. He glanced at me when I stepped outside. "You're lighter." "Not lighter," I said. "Clearer." He passed me a glass of water and leaned against the railing. "Clarity's underrated." I smiled faintly. "Clarity's what kept me from burning it all down." That weekend, we sat on the cedar bench Ethan built when we first moved in. The wood had weathered to silver honest in a way new lumber never is. I thought I'd feel vindicated, I admitted, like justice would feel louder. Ethan sipped his beer, and it feels like air, like I can breathe without carrying their mess in my lungs. "That's peace," he said, "and you earned it." We sat there in silence, the kind that isn't awkward but earned, like standing watch together after a storm. The next week, I made one more change. I updated my emergency contact forms, removing both Isabella and Caleb and my parents. When I handed the envelope to Ethan on the training field, he didn't open it. "I'm not sure they'd pick up if it rang," I said, "but I needed it on paper for my record for me." He studied my face. "You didn't do it out of anger." "No," I said. "I did it because I finally know the difference between loyalty and access." Later, as we walked the perimeter fence together, I realized something Ethan had been doing since the start. He never once asked me to explain the whole thing. "Why is that?" I asked. "Didn't need to," he said simply. "I saw it in your eyes." That night, I opened the small wooden box on our bookshelf, the one holding my academy pin, Ethan's first deployment photo, and the coin from my first classified mission. I added my mother's letter to it, not because I forgave her yet, but because it belonged there as an artifact, not an open wound. I closed the lid, feeling the weight of it in my hands. Artifacts are proof of what you survive and who you choose to become after. By the time autumn rolled into the city, the investigation had settled into history. No more hearings, no more depositions, just the slow fade of paperwork being filed, archived, and eventually forgotten by everyone except the people who lived it. I still got the stares, sometimes subtle, quick, like people were checking for cracks in my armor, but I stopped trying to smooth the edges for them. Let them wonder. I knew the truth, and more importantly, the right people knew it too. One crisp Saturday morning, Ethan and I were walking through the farmer's market near the harbor. The smell of fresh bread and coffee drifted through the air, mingling with the salty bite of the water. A young woman in uniform passed us, barely old enough to have finished training. She slowed, then turned back. "Lieutenant Ward." I stopped. "Yes." Her voice was soft but sure. "I heard what happened. Not the gossip, the real version. Thank you for not letting them take your name." I didn't know her, but in that moment it didn't matter. She wasn't thanking me for surviving. She was thanking me for fighting in a way she could see herself doing if the time came. "Protect your name," I told her. "No one else will guard it like you can." She nodded once, then walked away, head a little higher. At home that afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, the same spot where the gift box had sat months before. The counters were clean now, the air carrying nothing but the scent of garlic from the simmering sauce on the stove. The memory of that day still lived here, but it no longer owned the space. I realized then that the real victory wasn't the court ruling or the reinstatement. It was that I could stand in this exact spot and feel steady, not haunted. Ethan came in from the patio, sleeves rolled up, hair a little messy from the wind. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking about the box," I admitted. His brow furrowed. Not the contents, I clarified, just the fact that I didn't open it. That one choice changed everything. He leaned against the doorway. "Because it proved you don't have to take what someone hands you, especially if it feels wrong." I nodded. "It's not about suspicion. It's about permission. They counted on me, granting it without question." That night we ate dinner outside under string lights, the air just cool enough to warrant a blanket over my shoulders. As we sat there, I realized how rare true stillness had become in my life and how much I valued it now. There was a time I thought strength was absorbing every hit without flinching. Now I knew it was deciding which blows were worth taking and which ones to sidestep entirely. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Nichols. The federal case files were officially closed. "No appeals?" I asked. "None that will stick," he said. "It's over." When I hung up, I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. I just let out a long breath and let the quiet fill the room. That evening, I walked down to the pier alone. The sun was sinking low, turning the water to molten gold. I stood there for a long time, watching the tide shift, thinking about the life I'd built, the life I'd defended, and the parts I'd willingly let go. The betrayal had taken pieces from me, trust time, certain illusions I'd once held about family, but in their place, something stronger had grown. A spine that didn't bend under familiar weight, a voice that didn't hesitate, a clarity that didn't ask for permission. On the walk home, I passed a bookstore. In the window was a single sign that caught my eye: "Rewrite your story." I smiled to myself. I already had. That night, sitting beside Ethan on the worn cedar bench, I said, "They tried to use my steadiness as a weapon against me." He turned his head slightly, and they forgot one thing: discipline cuts both ways. When the wind shifted, carrying the scent of the ocean, I knew that whatever came next, promotion, deployment, or something I couldn't see yet, I'd meet it with the same clarity I'd fought for here. Because the greatest victory wasn't in winning the fight. It was in knowing exactly who I was when the fight was over. Strength is often mistaken for silence, absorbing other people's mistakes, holding the weight of their chaos so they can keep moving. For years, I believed that was loyalty. I thought protecting family meant shielding them from consequences, even when it cost me pieces of myself. But strength isn't about how much you can carry. It's about knowing what not to pick up. It's about drawing lines in permanent ink and refusing to let anyone blur them. Not bosses, not strangers, not even the people you share blood with. The day I didn't open that box was the day I understood that boundaries are an act of defense as much as armor is. You can't stop people from trying to write their mess into your story, but you can keep their pen out of your hand. I didn't win because I fought the hardest. I won because I decided which battles were mine and which were never going to be. We all get boxes in life: offers, requests, obligations wrapped to look harmless, maybe even loving. The key is learning to pause before accepting them. Ask yourself, does this serve my values or does it compromise them? If it compromises, it's not a gift, it's a liability. You don't need to be in the military to apply this. At work, it could be refusing to take the blame for a colleague's missed deadline. At home, it could be saying no to a family member's favor that feels wrong. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're the framework that keeps your integrity intact.